All right, Matt, these are my exam two essay questions, so I'm just going to jump right into them. Number one, the first bullet point. The answer to this is what is missing from the standard textbook definition is that we are attempting to predict possible risks to manage. The entire purpose of risk management is to be one step ahead to prevent the possible accidents. So there needs to be something in the definition that explains that we are trying to predict outcomes. The definition that we have now does not explain that we are trying to predict outcomes. It just says that we are trying to manage the risks. Okay, the next bullet point. Um, there are many solid ways to identify risk, but I believe the best way is to look at your facility or business, whatever it may be, with a pessimistic attitude. And this is important because people with an optimistic attitude won't see the possible bad things that can happen. Like my mom example is a super optimistic person. She doesn't see like the bad things that can happen. For me, I'm pessimistic. I do see the possible bad things that can happen. um, just an example of this, I mean, for the hazard or the risk management project where we had to find some type of risk on campus, I found that was actually a very good way to find the risk is just walking around, looking at certain areas of the campus, and just thinking of possible ways that something could happen or some accident could happen that could lead to something terrible happen to someone. The next bullet point. The most common way employers use the transfer strategy in risk management is by transferring the potential losses to their insurance companies through their insurance policies. The next bullet point. All employees should be involved in the risk management planning process. Having good communication with employees is extremely beneficial. So what I mean by this is you're asking who should be um, who should be um, who should be included in the risk management process, and obviously it should be everyone. There's no reason that one certain employee should just not be included because when the time comes and you need to jump into action with the risk management, everyone should know what they need to do and what everyone else is doing. Which employees are the best to speak with when identifying risks? The best employees to speak with when identifying risks are the ones that are working on the floor dealing with the possible risks. Why ask someone, like a corporate person, what the possible risks are of this company when you can just ask the people on the floor? Like this, the example that pops into my head is The Office. Why would you ask David? I forget what his name is, but David, the corporate guy, when you could ask Daryl what the possible problems are working in the warehouse? It's just common sense. All right, number two. What is an emergency action plan, EAP, and how does it differ from a management plan, CMP? And what are the critical components for each type of plan? All right. So an emergency action plan is an organized plan that is put in place within the company that will be used when there is an emergency in the workplace. An example of this is when we would do monthly fire drills at school. Everyone, I mean, if you threw me in a school right now, I would know probably what to do and where to exit from my high school just from having those drilled into my head. And it's a good thing because when a fire happens, it's going to be very, people are going to be scared. And it's good that people know what to do. Now, a crisis management plan is when the company is forced to deal with unexpected events that can be a threat to the company as a whole. Because the crisis is an unforeseen event, the planning has to go in effect immediately. This isn't something that this could be like a natural disaster, something current, like something that you just do not see, or like the stock market crash, something just crazy. Um, you can't really plan ahead for this, and you just have to jump into it and just dive in, and you have to plan immediately. So the big difference between these two is that an EAP, an emergency action plan, is far and planned before and thoroughly planned before the emergency can even take place. While a crisis, you basically just are when life gives you lemons, you just have to deal with it. That's what a crisis management plan is. All right, number three, the Jenny story. So, Jenny is working at a summer camp for youths in the Poconos. Two boys are fooling around, start throwing rocks. Jenny is not paying attention. She's texting on her phone with her boyfriend. She's distracted. She's not paying attention to the boys. One rock is thrown and it leaves a huge gash in another kid's head. And now you ask who's legally responsible and why. So Jenny, along with the camp itself, is legally responsible for the injury. Jenny is employed by the camp. Therefore, she has a legal duty to supervise the children, and she failed to do her job by being on her phone negligently. Jenny is employed by the camp just to take care of the kids, and she was unable to. Therefore, she has some of the blame for that. And the camp itself is also held responsible because it happened on their grounds, obviously, and they were the ones who hired Jenny and trained her, at least you would hope trained her, to supervise. And whether they didn't do a good enough job or they just picked the wrong candidate, Jenny is still part of their company, and she failed to do her job, leading to uh, Jenny and the company being responsible for the injury. Now, number 4. So, Catherine is the coordinator of the indoor go-kart track, Karts and Eats, and you provided us with this waiver for Karts and Eats, which seems more like you're signing up for a bank or a gym membership. So, just to start off with the waiver, there is no specific language that there's a risk at all. It just shows, looking at this, it could be, literally anything. You're signing up for some email chain. It just says Carls and Eats or Karts and Eats at the top, and then it's just date, email, names, addresses, parent, guardian. It's just, there's nothing important on this. Seriously, nothing other than names. And then the parent of guardian who is of age is not even required to sign. It's just given name. That's not a signature. You need a signature. You can't even tell this document is a wager, or not a wager, a waiver. It gives zero insight on what you're about to partake in, and that there is risk involved. It doesn't say that at all whatsoever. Normally, like when you sign a waiver, like the waiver that we have to sign to show, or I don't know if you, yeah, I would say this is a waiver, saying that we are not like going to cheat, like the academic integrity. It gives you that paragraph saying like this is what I stand for, and then you sign your name saying that you agree to these statements. There's no statements that the parent would agree to. You're basically just signing and letting your kid go, and then if something bad happens, Carson Eats says like nothing that proves that the parent was aware of what could happen, and they could just be held extremely accountable for any accident that happens. All right, and the last question, number 5. Your company, MJT Resorts in Erie, PA, has decided to update its workplace drug policy. Given that the state of Pennsylvania has decided to allow and use the purchase of medical marijuana, your team has decided that you will allow those who have a legal state permission to use the medical marijuana, as long as it is away from property. So, how will the hiring procedures be affected? Considering that our team has decided to allow those who can legally use marijuana to do so, the procedures around employment will be very different. The hiring process will require possible new employees to present a medical card to allow them to use the substance as long as it is not on property. The problem with this is that imagine you have two candidates, the exact same person, same college, same degree, everything, same anything. One person uses marijuana medically and the one person doesn't. Who do you think you're going to hire? Probably going to hire the person that doesn't use it, due to the sheer facts that marijuana just leads to many more accidents in the workplace. Now, with that said, where am I? In the event that an accident happens, the employees will be tested. I think that it's important that everyone should be tested because even if you have a medical card, it doesn't mean that you're just going to be using, and even if you don't, it doesn't mean that you're going to be using. It's just a basis to look at someone. If someone that does not have a med card tests positive, they should certainly face consequences, something like a non-paid suspension or getting fired if it is a repeat offense, because they are not even allowed by the law to be using, and they are still using, and they are a part of an accident in a workplace while illegally using. That's just not what you want. Now, on the other hand, for someone who has a medical card, if they were part in the accident and they do test positive, they should be certainly held accountable. Just because they are legally allowed by the state to use doesn't mean that they should be using or should be even high on the job, because you're just risking yourself, you're risking your employees, and you're risking the company. So after they've been asked to stop, they will be following the same procedure as someone without a medical card now. So what I mean by this is, like the person who tested positive without the medical card, they'll follow, like after they test positive with medical, they'll just follow right into suit. Like then they'll be treated as someone without a medical card, and if they continue to screw up and continue to test positive, they will follow consequences. Now, following an accident, employees will be drug tested according to their standing. If an employee had nothing to do with the accident, they will not be tested. If an employee that had something to do with the accident, they will be tested monthly until they pass twice to make sure that they are actually off the substance. Matt, I'm sure you've heard some of these stories of people miraculously passing drug tests, and it's really just not good. It gives the wrong message that you can just do whatever and get away with it, and that's not how it should be. If you pass the first drug test, great. You're gonna have to come back a month later and pass the second one. Um, Marijuana will still not be allowed in the workplace, even for those who can legally use, because it's just something that is not mixed with working. You can look at the numbers. Like more due to marijuana, more workplace accidents happen. It's just that simple. Marijuana will, excuse me, and if an employee tests positive for a drug test without permission to use medical, medical marijuana, they will be given a consequence based on their work performance. So, if the employee is great at their job and has no problems in the workplace, then they should not be punished. Just because they're doing marijuana, which might be an illegal activity, it doesn't affect their performance at work. And truthfully, it can help them if they're using it in a controlled environment, not at the workplace. If the employee is great at their job, or excuse me, now on the other hand, if the employee is screwing up on the job, they will be given a warning, and if they continue to fail the drug test and continue to have bad performances at work, they will just be fired. It's really that simple. All right, Matt. Well, that is my exam too. Thank you.